Alright, so we are starting in on our restoration rebuild of an 82 Virago 750. And so I'm going to start with the carburetors. This whole bike came as a big pile of parts. And so these carburetors I bought because the carburetors that I had didn't have a lot of parts. And you can see over here I just had just a minimal amount of parts for them. Didn't have the diaphragms, didn't have any of that. And so I got this set off of eBay, but as you can see, it looks like a aluminum eating beaver or something got a hold of them, trying to get the pilot needles out. And so what I'm going to do is take all the good parts off these and put them on my good bodies. So we'll just go through here on the process of stripping them down, and then you'll see how to take your carburetors apart and put them back together. So what you end up with is just the bodies, and we'll start with those to kind of get them put back together. Alright, so we're ready to start putting some linkages together. That's kind of the first thing. When you take it all apart, you can take the butterflies out. The biggest thing I want to do is make sure these seals were good. And so I took it all the way apart. Normally when I'm cleaning them, I don't take the little butterflies off. But if you look over here on the carburetor set, it's real easy to see which one's which to keep up with everything. It's got an R for rear, for the rear cylinder, number 1, and then it's got an F for front. But then the easiest way to tell on the carburetor body is that the straight one is the number 1 cylinder, the rear cylinder. The angled one is your front cylinder. And so all we're going to do is just reassemble this, but we want to use the parts that came off for the butterflies because there's little bitty variations in these over the years. And so you want to try to keep your butterflies the same. So we're going to keep these linkages off this one, but we're going to change some of the nicer looking parts like the springs and the plates and things off of this one. So to start out, all we do is figure out which one is rear. So this one is the rear cylinder, like here. And so all we want to do is put our linkage in, so we make sure our seal is good. We'll slip our link in, and it's going to sit up like this when it's complete. As you can see on this carburetor, it tips forward, and so what we want to do is put our plate in forward. So let's go ahead and put our other seal on before we forget that. Alright, so now we just got to put this one in. So this is O stands for out, so I wrote it when I took it off. T is for top, so it's the top of the carburetor, and R is for the rear cylinder. And so the tip direction is forward, so what we want to do is put it in there so we can tip it forward. And so we just slip it in here in the forward direction, and you just kind of wiggle it until it goes in there. Pretty snug fit, so it just barely fits in there in one little orientation. And once you get it in there and get it close, you can tip it down, and then you see that it locks it in position. So we got to use our screws that came with this carburetor. So they're over here, and for these 2 little screws, since you don't want that going down in your motor, best thing to do is to put a little bit of removable Loctite on them. That way you don't have to worry about them coming out and going down in your motor. Okay, so here's what I was talking about in differences. If you look down in there, you can see these have regular heads on them. This year model has flats, and so they're the head is flush. Either way it goes, you want to keep those the same. So we got that one done. Now we just need to do our other carburetor, and we'll get ready to put the linkage back together. Alright, so now we got our linkages connected back, and what we want to do is connect these centers back up. So the center links, so let's set them on their heads so we can see. So this is the front and this is the rear. So here we have the front and the rear. So if you can see the linkage, it's held together with the screw in the middle. And right here's where these links connect up. And so what you want to do is have these two links on top of each other so they come together. And inside of there is where you want to have your bushings. And so these come together with little plates. So you got a plate, and then you got the center roller, and then you got a plate, and this is what rolls in between. So these guys go together. Form the linkage, and we'll put the spring and the pin that connects them together in there in just a second, but we want to get it all kind of held together. So we need to get this frame off. I could use my old frame, but it's not as pretty as this one. So what we want to do is go ahead and get this frame off. So to do that, you could try a big screwdriver and try to break that free right there, but you're not going to have any success because these things are on so super tight. So what we want to do is switch down here to the floor, and so the only way to get these off easily is to use a impact driver. And they'll come off pretty easy. So now, with them broke loose, we can take that off and put that on our nice carburetors. Remembering who's who, this one is the front carburetor, this one is the rear. You just want to have that where it goes to the front and to the rear. And so we'll set it back on here like this. This is R for the rear carburetor, and we're going to catch that linkage right there in the middle. Okay, so now you got that snug down. Now you can look at how to put the linkage mechanism back in. So if you see over on this carburetor, you can see with it open, the spring goes on top and the screw goes in the bottom. And so what we want to do is put the spring in the top. Lock it down in there. And then we put the screw in the bottom. And this is where you do your synchronization. This is where you synchronize the two carburetors together. So we'll have to do that once we get everything put back together and set back up. Maybe I'll make a video of that as well. So now all we got to do is hook our linkage back together down here. At the bottom. So it takes a little washer and it takes an E-clip. Like that. Alright, so now our carburetors are back together and we can start adding parts to them. So we'll go ahead and finish up the butterflies. As you can see, now the butterfly linkage works. And so what I'm going to do is later I'm going to add a little bit of lubrication to this slide right here and get that to where it's not so rough. Okay, so flipping back around, if we go back to the front, what I want to do is get this mechanism right here. So we're going to steal that off the pretty carburetor. Now what you want, before you go cranking, you want to make sure that that lever is hitting that. If you don't have that touching, you're actually putting all your weight on your butterfly, and so you can mess up your butterfly. It's only that much. So we're just going to transfer that over to here. And we're going to close our butterfly. Catch the corner of the spring and rotate back up. Then all you gotta do is just get your spring to get in position and walk it back on there. So now we're missing this little guy. He's got to come off. It's that before the butterfly. Okay, so that one's done. So let's flip over. And we're going to do the other one. Tighten it up until we lift the butterfly off the wall. That way we know there's no damage to the butterfly. So what I'm fighting with is that little connection right there. Just want to make sure that that locks in properly. So I'm going to leave these loose so I can move that around just a little bit. Now I can move them around a little bit and get those to lock in there because they were sitting out. Okay, so we're ready to transfer our choke mechanism over, and that's going to tie it together. So in order to get the choke mechanism off, you got to take the covers off, or at least this little connector plate. And so I'm going to take this one connector plate loose. Then you can access the choke mechanism. And you can take it off and put it on the other carburetor. Take the choke mechanism loose, slide it out, and we're going to reuse that for the carburetors. Now we want to get the little chokes off. There needs a little cleaning, so we'll clean it. Now we just want to install them in our new carburetors. Let's grab our new carburetor. The lever. And so when you put it on, you got to make sure the lever is opposite to the throttle set. So we just want to set him on there and get a screw started. Now with everything together, chokes work. So that all works pretty good. So we're working our way. So while we got this one up here, the next stop would be putting in the diaphragms and doing all that. But as you can see, in my carb body, I don't have the emulsion tubes. So first off, the emulsion tubes have to go back in before you put the diaphragms and everything together. So we got to get the emulsion tubes out of the carburetor. So now we want to take the tops off this carburetor and the bottoms off so we can get the emulsion tubes out. So if you note under here, the two jets, these jets are interchangeable in their holes. So you got to be careful with which one goes where as well. So we're going to have to figure out which jet goes where. But right now it's showing the 122s on the pilot circuit. So we'll leave them that way. But right now I'm after the emulsion tube. I'll worry about these jets later. So first off, I want to take the emulsion tube jet out. If I can get it out. Okay, so there went my emulsion tube. And there's the jet for it. So keep in mind, that emulsion tube may be different front to back. So the carburetor I'm working on right now is the one with the straight tube, so it's the rear. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the rear. And all you do is just slip it down into the hole there. And then you're going to hold up on it. And you're going to tighten the jet back in. We've got to do the same for the front. Jet back on. And there we go. So we're getting ever so much closer. Okay, so while we're down here, let's go ahead and get the bottoms buttoned up. So we want to go ahead and take the other jet out, move it for the pilot circuit. Okay. Now we want to get our floats off. So that's where having a little bit of fingernail helps. So you take the pins out and it raises the float up. Then you want to get a 10mm socket and break the seats loose. Okay, make sure there's a little screen on there. You either have this kind of screen for the newer type, or the original ones have this little screen. And we can put our floats back in. There we go. So this one has gaskets. So we're going to take our gaskets out, trade them to the new ones. There we go. So that's everything for the inside. So now we just have to put our bowls back on. I gotta make sure like that little port right there is clean. I can try it right now. With some cleaner, if you put it in there. It's supposed to come out the bottom. If it comes out the bottom, then it's good. So that one's okay. And there we go. So now the only thing left on the bottom of the old carburetor is the idle or the pilot needles. So we'll take them out. The ones with the O-ring right here, they don't have a seat in the bottom. If you get the replacement kind that have the O-ring that sits in the bottom, they're also going to have a little seat. So the O-ring goes in the hole, then this little itty bitty washer, and then the spring, and then the jet. So this is a different type. It's a replacement, but it's not the same as the originals. We'll use the originals if we can. So all you want to do is just clean your O-ring off and Slide him down in there. And you don't ever want to bottom these out other than just to feel the bottom. As I go down, as soon as I feel bottom, and I know I'm seated. So you never want to go past too tight or you won't get them back out of there. So that's bottomed out, and then you'll back up from there. So it'd be like half turn, 1.5 turns, something like that will get you started. That's got everything on the bottom. Now we can switch back to the top because there's a couple more jets up top. So we'll mount him in device and go after these jets up top. Alright, so we got her mounted. Now everything's off the bottom of our donor carburetors, other than some of these little mechanisms we need to take off sides. But underneath these little pipes right here, if you can see, there's 2 more jets underneath those. And so we need to get those jets out and put them in our carburetor bodies. So that one you have to take loose right here. You get you an Allen wrench and you break those loose. Some of the newer carburetors don't have those, so all it is a little spring and a little plunger. And so you got to get that tube out. So if you can see in the light, there's not a good way to grip it, but you can take some tiny needle nose like this and just grab the tube and just kind of walk it a little bit. And most time you'll get it to come up enough that you can get a screwdriver back behind it. Let me do it again. And then that tube comes out. So we've got to keep that tube. But underneath there, if you can see, is 2 more jets. And those jets have to be in a certain spot too. And so these jets got to come out. So let's get a screwdriver and see. The screwdriver's too small. So you need one that really fits well into the jet. So maybe this one. There we go. These jets have an order as well. Put it in. And we got to do the same for the other one. Okay, so I had to pause for a minute because as I was going through, I realized that somebody had been drilling out my jets on these carburetors, so I had to go back and regroup, get the book out and see what we got. So what I end up looking at is, if you look on this one, it's supposed to be by the book. The pilot jet, pilot air is supposed to be a 185. And so what we got over here is I have collected up the correct jets. So that's the larger of the 2 jets up top, is this one that goes right there. So apparently when somebody took the carburetor bodies apart to clean them, they put the jets in wrong, because I was thinking something's not right. So there's that one, and then this one's supposed to be by the book. The pilot, or the main air jet, is supposed to be a 50. So that's what this one is. So they were a little bit messed up. So now we got them back in the right order. And we can put this top carburetor back together, and then I'll also open up the bottom again, and we will check and make sure that we've got the right jets. To the other side, remember that the one toward the intake is the larger one. That's your pilot. So the larger one goes on the side toward where it connects to the motor. Jets are back in. So now all we got to do is push our little tubes back in and put our little spring back in. Put our little cover back on. Okay, so let's set this back up. We're gonna do our diaphragms now. Okay, so we got our emulsion tube down in there. And so now we want to put our diaphragms back in. So they kind of get bent as they're sitting on the table. And we are stock on this one, so we're not worrying about any kind of extra washers. So you just line the little guy up. Some of these are a little difficult to contend with, but you got to get this to sit, because you can't pinch it with the cover. So you have to play and play, and eventually you can get it to stay in the groove long enough you can get the cover on. Okay, so this one's not wanting to stay in there, so what we're gonna have to do, we got to get it to where it sits down in that groove right there, and this one's just not wanting to do it. So what we're gonna do is take a little bit of Vaseline and just run it around that surface right there, just to try to make it a little bit sticky, because it's super important that you get that diaphragm in that groove. So we're going to put a little Vaseline on there just to make it ever so sticky, and try it again. So diaphragm goes in, line it up to the tab. Let's see if that Vaseline is enough to hold it in position for us. Still not wanting to see it in there, but it's a lot closer. It's staying on the edge. So we got that in. We'll put our spring in, and then we want to put our cover on. Okay, so as you set the cover down, you want to kind of walk that gasket down until you don't see any gap. If you see a gap, that means you pinched it. So you can always take it back off and just make sure it wasn't pinched, so it looks okay. Set it back down on there and just make sure it's not pinched. And then you're going to have to get a couple screws in it just to hold it in place. Okay, so that's got that one down. Now we'll just do the same thing over here. Okay, so now we got it held together. Now we can finish connecting the two carburetors. So what you got to do is get that little post to line up in the middle there, and then you're going to put your connector on. So get the two together, and then we're going to put our connector that connects the two carburetors at the top. And this one goes right here for the throttle. There we go. So now we just tighten everybody up. So now we can switch back to the bottom and tighten these up, because we got the carburetors all put together now. Still have to adjust the how they open with each other, but I'll show how to do that once I get everything set up and cleaned back up. So we're almost there. Now we're just going to flip it back over, and we're going to take the bowl back off and just check those jets. Okay, so what we got here, the book says the main the main jet is a 122. So this is the main that has the emulsion tube that comes up. So that's your main. So they've got a 41 in there. So we never would have started. So now what we got to do is take that jet out. And we got to replace that 41 jet with what will be the right jet, which is a 122. The idle circuit is showing as a 122, or it is a 122 in here, but the idle circuit is supposed to be a 41. So these jets were reversed. So there we go. So now everything's buttoned up. I'll have to wait till I get fuel in it before I can set my float. So I'll be taking this apart again when I get ready to set my float height. But at least I know I got my jets in the right spot. And there we go. So there's our carburetors all put back together. So now we got these working, diaphragm's working, our choke is working, and everything looks good. So there we go. So there's how you reassemble a carburetor. Well, alrighty. Well, thanks for watching.